Cheryl asked this a while back. She was saying the episode that you just did, she just listened to, was right in line with my prayers. You mentioned at the end about realizing we aren't feeling close at times to God. I struggle with never feeling or experiencing a joy with just being with the Lord in a carved out time. So setting a time aside to be alone with God, she said she never feels great joy or just being with him, that intimacy in a carved out period of time. Although I approach such a time with intentionality that I was speaking of, trying to learn that time with him, it's not always natural. So here's her question. I continually perceive that I must be somehow coming from a manipulative stance, trying to cause something from God. I call that being transactional. Otherwise, I wouldn't have this sense of distance and lack of joy. How do I get away from that feeling? This is a years and years long struggle. When I listen to you, meaning to me, or others, I realize there's something missing in my experience of union with Jesus, but it just never changes. I've talked with the Lord about it many, many times. She goes on describing sort of the circular thinking of trying to do better and it not causing good feelings and thinking she must be doing something wrong. That feeling is not because, and so here's my answer. I thought I was in her question. Here's my answer. I actually wrote this out because I've been praying for Cheryl. The feeling that you're having, Cheryl, is not because you're doing something wrong. We need to disassociate the feelings and experiences we're having with our rightness or wrongness. You're not doing something wrong because something is difficult or awkward or doesn't feel right. We're not pursuing a feeling. We don't spend time with God so that we can feel more joy or intimacy with him. When we were children, we don't start learning to walk because it feels better on 2 feet. We're trying to do something, right? We're trying to get to something we can't reach otherwise. We're trying to walk to our parents or reach something on the couch, or we see other people doing it and want to try it some ourselves. It looks good. It sounds good. We want to do it. That doesn't mean that it's easy or comfortable or it isn't awkward or it isn't hard. That feeling is because something is difficult. If you are trying to spend time alone with God and that is difficult or awkward or doesn't produce some great joy or existential experience, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean you aren't operating from intimacy with Christ. It doesn't mean he's not with you and in you in the process. When I started to learn to drive my car, it was awkward. When I started to learn to write with a pencil, it was awkward. When I started to learn to eat with a fork, it was awkward. It would have been easier to eat with my hands, to continue just riding my bicycle instead of driving, to not learn to write with a pencil. All of those things were awkward. If it weren't for positive peer pressure and seeing other people do it and wanting to be able to do those things, I would have never persevered and learned to write, which is still pretty messy now that I mention it, now that I think about it. I would have never learned to write, to eat with a fork, to cook, to if awkwardness is the test of something being a good thing to do, then we would all still be crawling around. In fact, a kid that's really good crawling may be slower to learn to walk because they're getting around just fine, right? Their motivation to walk might be less. That doesn't mean they're less naturally inclined to walk, or that they shouldn't walk, or that they're doing something wrong when they walk, or there's some biological problem in learning to walk. That just means they're getting around really well crawling. They may be slower to learn to walk. On the other hand, someone who's really great as a crawler might have the skills and have gained the confidence to learn to walk quicker. We can't judge them as a walker based on the difficulty or ease with which they learn to walk. Think about that. If I saw a child who's 1 year old and they're walking around great, I'm not going to go, they're going to be an Olympic walker. You don't know that. It doesn't mean that they're great at it or better than anybody else. It just means that something going on in their experience made it easier for them to learn that sooner. That doesn't mean they're going to be better at anything a year from now. And if it was difficult for them to learn to walk, or if they were slower to learn to walk, that doesn't mean that something is wrong. It means that it's always awkward, and we have different motivations and different skills and different experiences that lend themselves to learning things sooner or later, but it's awkward for all of us. So it is with solitude with God. I was an obnoxious kid. If you think I'm an obnoxious adult with a lot of words, you should have seen me as a kid. I talked so fast, I stumbled over my own words and just I wasn't really stuttering. I couldn't get out all the words because I was trying to get out 10 words at once. And my granddad called me putt-putt because I went put. I was trying to talk too fast. I hadn't learned how to pace my own words. Some of you would say, Mike, you still haven't learned how to pace your own words. Did that mean that I was going to be a bad talker? I would venture to say no. I would venture to say that communication was actually one of my stronger skills. But because of the things that have made me a strong communicator now, those same strengths of how I was thinking and how that translated into verbiage, that actually made it difficult for me to learn and good at it once I did. That's my proposition. That's my guess. Does that make sense? So that feeling does not mean that you're doing anything wrong, Cheryl, in your solitude with God. We're not pursuing a feeling. Don't judge how you're doing by a feeling. That's not what it's about. That feeling is because something is hard. That doesn't mean that something is wrong. Something being hard doesn't mean something is wrong. Something being easy does not mean something is right. Something that is more comfortable or out of our comfort zone does not determine whether we should or shouldn't do it, or we're doing it right or wrong. That feeling is because something is not normal to us. And normal isn't the determinant of what is good or bad.